Japanese aggression in the Pacific started years before their attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. Imperial Japan had invaded China 4 years earlier, and, dreaming of world conquest, their warlords had even drawn up plans to conquer Europe. When Hitler's armies began their blitzkriegs, the Japanese conveniently became Germany's ally and turned their attention to making the Pacific Ocean a Japanese lake. In a wave of simultaneous attacks, Japanese forces quickly occupied Burma, Thailand, the Philippines, and Singapore. They took almost every island in the South Pacific, plus the northern half of New Guinea. The Army of the Rising Sun was knocking loudly on Australia's door. In early May, 1942, protected by the best pilots in the Imperial Navy Air Force, a Japanese flotilla steamed toward southern New Guinea to secure the last stepping stone to the land down under. An American fleet intercepted them on the Coral Sea. A historic battle between aircraft carrier fleets ensued. For the first time since naval warfare began, two navies fought an engagement without surface ships ever exchanging a single shot. Even though the Americans lost more tonnage, they turned back the Japanese and bought precious breathing time. A month later, the Japanese High Command tried to deliver one decisive knockout punch and ordered a huge armada to the island of Midway to destroy what remained of the American Pacific Fleet. The engagement lasted 3 days, and once again, not one ship fired on another. Although Japanese planes greatly outnumbered ours, we were able to blunt their attacks. Our dive bombers decimated the Imperial fleet by sinking 4 carriers. The Japanese suffered their first naval defeat in history, and the war's momentum turned as the Americans began their counterattack. "10,000 United States Marines landed on Guadalcanal that same August. Resistance was fanatical. Nearly 25,000 Japanese died defending the island, while we lost fewer than 2,000 men. The fighting lasted 6 months. We had to blast the enemy out of fortified caves that honeycombed the rough terrain. Our bombers softened up enemy positions so our troops could capture each hotly contested inch of land. Unlike the war in Europe, our bombers could operate in relative safety thanks to our heroic fighter planes who cleared the sky of enemy interceptors. But commanders like the flamboyant Major General Claire Chenot argued that the most effective use of bombers would be to cripple the Japanese with massive attacks on manufacturing and supply centers. He pointed out that because of relatively short distances to enemy targets, our fighter planes could provide continual air protection for our bombers. Raids by B-24 Liberators began to shatter military installations deep in Burma and China. Wave after wave of B-24s returned to report their targets successfully destroyed. Their pilots gave due credit to their fighter escorts, whom they called Little Friends. The fighter arsenal included the P-47 Thunderbolt, a tough, high-altitude fighter that carried 8 machine guns on its wings. The P-38 was called the Lightning, perennial master of air with its long range and concentrated firepower. And this is the nearly invincible Mustang, the P-51, the world's fastest propeller plane. And now, here are documents from that era that showed an anxious population back home how the war in the Pacific was being won.
Air Offensive, South Pacific. The strategy has been made clear. Islands are airdromes, strong points from which our air power can fan out to sever enemy lines. The Japs know this only too well. Even Domain News Service has stated, whenever the enemies build an air base on an island, our communications and supply with other islands become difficult. Ever polite, the Japs didn't care to say how difficult. Over 100,000 Japs in bases scattered from the marshes to the jungles of New Guinea have been cut off, with no chance of being supplied or evacuated. Once strong military arms, they are now paralyzed, amputated, useless. Our tactics have changed since those desperate, bloody beachhead days at Buna and Guadalcanal, when we spent men, resources, and time trying to take every island by direct assault. Now, for the most part, we take only an enemy airfield or a place to build our own, use it to choke off Jap supply lines, plug him up with troops wherever he's fled. This leapfrogging is infiltration on a gigantic scale, a process that is moving us surely through the entire Jap island screen. From Guadalcanal and the Russells, we bypassed the Japs on Santa Isabel Island and hopped to Munda Point. From Munda, we got to Bella La Vella, jumping over enemy-held Colombangara. We skipped the nips on Balali and Kahili, as well as Choiseau, in a leap to Augusta Bay. And ignoring them at Buka, we took a 7-league stride to Green Islands, last and northernmost of the Solomons Group. They lie 100 miles inside a Jap-controlled area whose key bases are Buka, Cavite, Rabaul. Fighter planes can fly from these islands to Rabaul in 20 minutes. The Green Islands are a cluster of atolls shaped like a broken ring. The main one, Nissen, is 8 miles long, averages 800 yards in width. It is cliffed around its entire outer rim with bluffs rising 60 to 100 feet behind fringing coral reefs. On the inner side, it slopes to the lagoon and good landing beaches. Terrain is relatively flat. Maximum height is 197 feet. There are 2 coconut plantations. Except for these planted areas, the island is heavily wooded. Though of strategic importance, the Japs had built no permanent installations here. They had employed the islands principally as a barge staging base between Buka, Bougainville, and the Bismarcks. It was plain that American aircraft based here could cut off Bougainville and the Solomons from supplies to the north and from Rabaul, could gain air control of the whole area for the Allies. General MacArthur declared that for all strategic military purposes, it would complete the campaign for the Solomons. The plan was laid for attack. We went to work neutralizing enemy airfields. Rabaul, main base of Jap operations in the South and Southwest Pacific, got most of it. In the 2 months before the Green Island seizure, we dropped 2,200 tons of bombs in the Rabaul area. Japs fought back bitterly, but our knockdown blows were reducing their airfields to gray rubble. Painstakingly, they repaired them. They couldn't replace the 790 planes they lost, but by shuttling aircraft from one airdrome to another, they made the most effective use of what they had. However, as new planes were spotted, our pinpoint bombs canceled them out or kept them earthbound. By February 11th, we virtually controlled the air above Rabaul. Its principal airfield was so knocked out, they couldn't even launch reprisals against our bases on Bougainville. Couldn't attack our destroyer forces that thrust boldly into Bismarckian waters to shell Cavite and Rabaul. Our fighters began probing our next objective. No air opposition was met. The time was now. Dawn, February 15th, a task force stands off the Green Islands. Units composed largely of New Zealand infantrymen have already slipped ashore to scout the terrain. And now, signals are exchanged. The advance into the lagoon starts at 0700 as minesweepers lead the way. Higgins' boats soon follow, shuttling infantry and communications men to establish first beachheads. While the larger ships maneuver at sea, awaiting their turn to land, 10 to 15 unescorted Jap FALs sweep into attack. AA batteries help 9 of our Army and Navy fighters shoot them down. wrecks crash into the sea. We lose none, and the remaining Jap planes withdraw ineffectively. At 08:15, while the Navy continues its shelling, the LCIs steam through the narrow mouth of the lagoon with the main infantry force. At 08:45, the LSTs move into the lagoon. 47 Navy bombers are aloft to cover the landings and assist against possible counterattack, but they are not called. On the way in, enemy shore positions are fired with 40mm and 3-inch guns. Landing sites are Peconian Plantation on the west side and Tangalan Plantation on the east side. By 09:15, the LSTs are run up to the shore. Almost as soon as they scrape bottom, the bow ramps are dropped and the LSTs disgorge their men and cargoes. More than 70 Japs are known to be on the atoll, and the dense undergrowth offers perfect concealment. This could be costly, for often under such conditions, the only way to locate a hidden enemy is to receive his fire. These men know this, but it doesn't delay their business of hacking an airbase out of an island jungle. Work gets underway, while ammunition is carried ashore and the New Zealand troops start combing for Japs. At 09:45, 3/4 of an hour after the landing, surveyors are marking off a fighter strip. By 10:02, a local perimeter is established, while P-39s and 40s and Navy Hellcats and Corsairs skim the treetops to spot and strafe Jap installations. Famed Seabees now attack the tangled growth with heavy construction equipment. Bulldozers smash ahead in the first drive to clear an area for the runways. Immense hardwood trees, teak, mahogany, rosewood, often block the way. Then bulldozers are not only useless, but even damaged. The solution is dynamite. Tough-grained big ones like this teak sometimes take as many as 60 sticks. $5,000 of lumber crashes to earth, and one more obstacle is removed from what will be a fighter strip. Meanwhile, SBDs patrol all sectors. And for the next 2 days, 32 bombers will be constantly aloft, covering the area. With the first phase of the landing thus secured, the main unloading continues. By nightfall of this first day, Seabees will have smashed landing ramps out of the steep coral banks, will have put 2,500 tons of material ashore. They will have built 4 miles of roads for travel of all vehicles, from jeeps to 37-ton steam shovels. And work of another sort continues as Anzac patrols start systematic searches to track down and liquidate the Japs. Within the next 6 days, they find all of them, not only on Nissan, the main atoll, but on other principal islands in the ring. 22 are caught and killed on Ciro, 14 on Sao, and another small force on Pinnapel. But most of them are driven toward the south end of Nissan by a pincers movement down the east and west side of the island. These make a feeble stand at the mission, where we later find large stores of food, arms, and ammunition. Then they retreat further to a southwest pocket, where we corner and dispose of them. By February 23rd, all ground resistance is wiped out.
While this is going on, back at the original staging area, Russell Islands, a second contingent prepares to move up. LSTs line the shore again, this time receiving all the additional equipment necessary to complete and operate the newly won base. Vital to this is the establishment of an Army Airways communication system. An AACS officer drills this into his men. Without an AACS station, an airbase is like a blind man with a machine gun. It has the striking power, but it cannot direct it. Already less than 20,000 men have laced the globe with 1,000 AACS stations. This time, it's up to these few men, the 12th detachment of the 20th AACS, to stretch a standard system of orderly flight procedure to new zones. The day is bright. The water is blue and smooth. The South Seas are as men dream about them. But gun crews squint into the sunny sky, alert for enemy planes. For 3 days, the LSTs parade their tethered barrage balloons up the Solomon Slot, unmolested. And without incident, they arrive at what is now American shore, 6 days after the first invading force. The strip has been cleared of jungle, the island just about cleared of Japs.
The Navy's bombardment of enemy ground positions was relentless and deadly. Our flyboys decided the best way to keep Japanese planes away was through a series of surprise strikes on their bases, like the one you're about to witness.
Is approximately 550 miles from Port Moresby. It's a long way. Too long for medium bombers and the fighter escort they require. At least the Japs think so, because for a long time it has been hit only by heavy bombers and always at night. The sons of heaven are resting easy. On a certain day in August, the 8th Photo Squadron brings in some astonishing reconnaissance pictures. This is the town of Wewak. This is Wewak Strip. This is the Borum Strip. And it is crowded with airplanes, fighters, bombers, sitting wingtip to wingtip. It's the same at Dagua. 200, perhaps 250 airplanes in all. A sudden concentration of air power. The Japs are up to something. In the house on the hill, men gather to carry on the business of war. Quick decisions must be made. The future depends on sound judgment and courage. General Whitehead, commanding General Advanced Echelon 5th Air Force, consults with his staff. He says to them, this is the opening battle for air supremacy in Central New Guinea, and the idea is to get there first. It is still dark when the pilots are briefed. The heavy bombers have not yet returned from a preliminary night strike at Wewak. Bombs are loaded. Machine guns are checked. Trucks take the pilots and crews to their airplanes. The same old routine, except that this time it has a new and historic significance. Pilots and crews consider this new adventure. They have a long ride ahead. Colonel D.P. Hall leads the 3rd Attack Group. Pilots are ready, waiting. The ground crews have done their jobs. Now it's up to them. Finally, they take off. This is the road to Wewak, and these are the travelers. Mitchell medium bombers. That's right, mediums. The unexpected is about to happen. Courage born of sound judgment dares to use the weapon of surprise. Wewak is to be bombed and strafed by medium bombers. How will they get there? Let's just call it a secret weapon. Now they're moving on to their first rendezvous, where they will meet the fighters. There they come. Here are the fighters, the lightnings, and the sons of heaven don't like them at all because they strike too hard, and usually only once. Met now, and together they move on inexorably to their second rendezvous, Wewak. They fly at about 12,000 feet, hiding under a cover of clouds. About 15 miles from Wewak, they drop down to treetop level, picking up speed. Now they're close to the target. The third attack group leads the way in. They climb over a small ridge, and there before them are the strips of Wewak. The Japs are fast asleep in the morning sun. The fighters keep constant watch. This is Dagwa, and here too the Japs are caught on the ground. Matter of seconds, and the strips of Wewak and Borum are covered with a pall of black smoke rising in columns above 1,500 feet. Nearly all airplanes on aerodromes are either damaged or destroyed. Inadequately dispersed airplanes have been bombed and strafed, causing tremendous explosions and a sheet of flame 100 feet in the air. At least 7 large fires, and again, nearly all airplanes believed either destroyed or damaged. The sons of heaven are wide awake now, but it's too late. Not a single Japanese airplane gets off the ground. The Japs have been caught with their planes down. And so the road back. It's a long way, 1,100 miles round trip, as far as a mission from England to Western Germany or from Africa to northern Italy. But the weather is clear, ceiling and visibility unlimited, particularly over the target. Again. Colonel Hall is justifiably proud of the third attack group. The ever-present Red Cross provides something to eat and a cold drink. Flyers are always hungry. Then comes interrogation by intelligence. Pilots report what they saw and did. All agree that enemy personnel seem to have been taken completely by surprise and that no enemy airplanes were airborne. Colonel Hall flies to Brisbane to make a report to the nation over NBC. He says he is convinced the Jap planes would have taken off in another 30 minutes to launch an attack against us. But, says Colonel Hall, we beat them to the punch and we pulverized them. Major Conley, Colonel Hall's co-pilot, says, we expected to find about 75% of the Jap planes in the air. We never thought we'd find them like sitting ducks. Major J.A. Downs, who led the right wing, says, as we strafed through that black column, the intense heat created an updraft that bounced our ship into the air. Planes were burning everywhere we looked. Colonel Hall's navigator, Lieutenant Don Leese, says, when we came in, some of the Japs were on the beach tossing a medicine ball around. Others were walking around on the sand in bright-colored robes. I never saw a beach crowd disappear so fast.
One of the war's bloodiest battles took place at Iwo Jima, a tiny volcanic island of huge strategic importance.
Iwo Jima, 8 square miles of volcanic ash, now the target of a United States Marine attack on the island's eastern beaches, near the tall volcano Mount Suribachi. Warships of the massive American Fifth Fleet gather off Iwo. By sea and by air, Iwo Jima is subjected to more than 70 days of bombardment, the heaviest of all on the last 3 days before the landing. Navy rockets. Landing craft is hit by enemy shells, leaving wreckage and dead. In the carrier-based assaults, there are casualties too. The pilot is thrown clear. Despite heavy seas, he stays afloat, waiting rescue by a destroyer. Back to the carrier by Breach's Boy. Navy and Marine Corps combat cameramen risked their lives to make these pictures of Iwo Jima. Some were killed. And now, D-Day. Off Iwo Jima, a vast 800-ship fleet brings to action an estimated 40,000 Marines, plus uncountable supplies of ammunition, weapons, vehicles, food, water, medicine. Planes lay smoke screens. The moment of assault draws near. Circles of 10 and more, landing barges and amphibious craft rendezvous offshore, ready for the drive to the beaches. keep coming despite cruel losses to seize an initial foothold on the shifting black volcanic ash of the beach. The first Japanese prisoners are brought aboard ship. In the first 16 days, 14,500 Japanese were killed on Iwo. Marines move up from the beach, facing the newest and best enemy weapons in the bloodiest fight in Marine Corps history. Scores of bomb-proof pillboxes overlook the beach. There was no choice but to storm them one by one. You are inside a Marine tank, approaching Motoyama Airfield number 1, first invasion objective, under heavy mortar fire. Backing up their comrades come Marines of the 3rd Marine Division. Never before in this war have so many men, perhaps 70,000, fought so bloody a battle for such a limited area. The battle for Motoyama Airfield continues. A Marine inspects enemy weapons at one of Iwo's concrete-lined dugouts. Some were 300 feet deep, some a mile long underground. The airfield is taken, and the advance grinds on. Japanese are caught in the open. Move ahead in a battle that outranks any ever fought in the Pacific. Iwo Jima, in its first 15 days, has cost 2,050 American dead. Closing in on Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima, the 5th United States Marine Division fires on Japanese gun emplacements studding the mountain. From From Suribachi's 500-foot elevation, enemy mortars hold the entire island in range. The Navy backs up land artillery, giving cover to the 40,000 Marines fighting on shore. Slowly, the Marines push forward up Mount Suribachi. With enemy bullets inches overhead, wounded are cared for by medical corpsmen. Iwo Jima has proven the toughest, bloodiest battle the Marines have ever fought. To win this tiny 8-square-mile area, 4,000 of them have died, and 20,000 Japanese. The attack never slackens. Now Mount Suribachi is smeared by Navy dive bombers. The Marines advance. The Japanese defenders of Iwo were select, specially chosen men, fighting with their army's newest weapons and every advantage of terrain in their favor. Their fortress caves, saturating the island, are wiped out by high explosives. Iwo Jima is conquered. Only isolated snipers remain. Its airstrips are already in use by American superfortresses. Atop Mount Suribachi, this flag is 625 miles from Tokyo.
Our fleet moved closer to Japan, only a few hundred miles away.
Yes, mighty close, especially for a modern bomber with a job to do. About an hour's run from any number of Jap airfields. But here we were, closer than any fleet in history to a major land-based air power. At Midway, in the Coral Sea, even in the Marianas, distance had been against the Japanese Air Force. But now, as our fleet sailed against the enemy inner islands, the range was easy for any Jap plane that could fly. There were those who said no fleet could risk it, but the stakes were high. With Okinawa in our hands, we could control the China coast, send swarms of planes to smother Japan. We were reaching for the throat of an empire. The risk must be taken. On the island of Okinawa, 5,000 miles from San Francisco, the earth shook from a fearful pounding by our ships and planes. British allies were hurling their naval might at the bypassed fortress of Formosa. They were raking Sakashima with shell and bomb. England's greatest battleships and newest carriers were there, screening us on the south, paying off with pleasure an old debt to Nippon. On the northern flank, Admiral Mark A. Mitcher's tireless Task Force 58 stepped up its 2 weeks old aerial assault on Kyushu and the enemy home islands. It was the 4th of July in reverse on Japanese shipping, harbors, airfields, factories. There's a Jap carrier in trouble. Men of the Navy, 400,000 men, called it Love Day. Elsewhere in the world, it was Easter Sunday, 1945. At 8:30 that morning, the Marines and the Army went in. $100,000 Yanks were rattling the lock on Japan's front door. They were plowing sacred soil with American boots, tractors, tanks. The first 7 days were battling, mysteriously quiet. Ashore, Army and Marines pushed steadily forward, looking for an enemy which had vanished. On the 1,400 ships supporting the invasion, men waited at their battle stations and waited. We knew the blow would come, but how and when? Struck. They call it kamikaze, meaning the divine tempest. We call them suicide planes, manned by pilots wearing the ceremonial red sash of the kamikaze corps. They specialize in one-way trips. Their destination, the deck or hull of any American ship onto which plane, bombs, burning gasoline, and red-sashed pilot can crash. Japan's secret weapon was no secret to our gunners or our flyers, who for months had been tinting the far Pacific with those same red sashes. But now, to meet our latest challenge, our deepest thrust, there rose every plane that could fly, new or old, from the very heart of Japan itself. Sixteen-year-olds, still in aviation schools, were given their wings, a sash, and a mission. It was a maniacal, all-out effort. Okinawa. It was desperation. It was suicide. But it would be the pattern from now on to the very finish. A struggle between men who want to die and men who fight to live. Land-based planes streaked low over the sea at our carrier. They drove out of the dawn, raced through dull overcast to throw themselves in screaming, smoking fury at Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner ships off Okinawa. Again, the old battleships were there, and new ships of the line. And a rugged little man named Ernie Pyle. There was no retreat. This was the fleet that came to stay, that had to stay. To stay because the men that the Navy landed needed tons of steel from Navy guns. Even as we beat off fresh waves of Jap planes overhead, the big guns of the fleet smashed enemy strongholds miles away. Had to stay because our men, advancing through the rice paddies and over the steep ridges, had to have close air support from the baby flat tops. In the air control room aboard the command ship, strike upon strike was ordered. Then the Navy and Marine flyers laid down precise, deadly rocket fire to help make the next 50 yards of advance less costly. This was the fleet that had to stay because always the stream of supplies to those troops must be steady and huge. A bridge of ships was thrown across the Pacific to bring our men more food, more medicine, more ammunition. And waiting at the end of the longest supply route in any war were the kamikazes. punching away at the enemy. Only there are no foxholes in the ocean. March 18th to the 21st, 556 Japanese planes destroyed. Men fought without sleep. Some fought with guns. Some with axes, torches. Some with fire-smothering foam. It was fix and fight at the same time. Many fell at their battle stations, and some were buried. Don't Give Up the Ship became more than a schoolbook legend. It became a fact of life. April 13th brought more planes and shocking news. Between attacks, weary men, afloat and ashore, paid honor to the beloved figure in the blue Navy cloak, said farewell to the father of the modern American Navy. Then they turned and met the next assault. During 3 fabulous months, thousands of aircraft were hurled against our ships. But only 10% ever slipped through our air patrol. Yet the siege by air went on. The Japanese beast still spat zeros. April 6th, 277 enemy planes shot down. April 12th, 100 planes. May 3rd, 97. In the early gray hours of the morning watch on May 9th, the great news came. VE Day in Europe. It came first to the lookouts, to the men who stand guard while the others sleep. Men were glad and grateful. Home seemed a little nearer. But for now, VE Day was simply the 1,247th day of our Pacific War. From the rolling decks of our carriers, the fighters rose once again to intercept the enemy. On the cruisers and destroyers and battleships, our heavy batteries once more leveled against the Jap-studded hills of Okinawa. The barking 20s and 40s sent streams of fiery lead into the world's last alien sky. May 12th, 164 Jap aircraft down. June 3rd, 45. June 6th, 67. June 8th, 30. Japanese paid with their Air Force, with their newest ships, 4,232 planes. The fleet that came to stay paid a price too. But our men, our ships, our planes, took everything the land could throw at the sea and handed it back double. The question, could a fleet stand up against the massed fury of land-based planes, got an emphatic answer from the men who fight to live, from the fleet that came to stay.
After 3.5 years of intensive fighting, a powerful new weapon brought the war to a halt in a matter of weeks. On August 6th, a uranium bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. On August 9th, a plutonium bomb decimated Nagasaki. Emperor Hirohito himself decided his people should suffer no longer. The war was over.